As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the frost-kissed fields of Maplewood, an unsettling silence enveloped the landscape. The air grew thick with an unshakable tension, as if the very earth held its breath, waiting for something unimaginable to unfold. A faint shimmer danced across the icy ground, hinting at a presence that whispered of the impossible. In the dead of night, the frozen expanse began to shift, as if the land itself were alive, breathing and pulsating with an energy that defied explanation. Shapes morphed and twisted, revealing patterns that seemed both ancient and otherworldly. What could have caused such a phenomenon to emerge from the stillness? The locals could only wonder, too afraid to venture closer, their hearts pounding with a mix of terror and awe. Caught between disbelief and a primal instinct to flee, they stood in silent witness to a miracle or a horror unfolding in their midst. Whatever was happening in that field was not bound by the laws of nature as they knew them, and the chilling truth lingered. Something was awakening in the darkness, and it was watching them back. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the frost-kissed fields of Maplewood, an unsettling silence enveloped the landscape. The air grew thick with an unshakable tension, as if the very earth held its breath, waiting for something unimaginable to unfold. A faint shimmer danced across the icy ground, hinting at a presence that whispered of the impossible. For the inhabitants of this small rural town, the night had always been a time of rest, a cocoon of tranquility wrapped in the blanket of darkness. But tonight was different. The familiar sounds of nocturnal life, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of an owl, seemed muted, replaced by an oppressive stillness that pressed down on the fields like an unseen weight. Under the pale light of a waning moon, the frost-covered terrain seemed to ripple gently, as if the land itself were alive, breathing and pulsating with an energy that defied explanation. Shapes morphed and twisted, revealing patterns that seemed both ancient and otherworldly. The ground, once solid and unyielding, now undulated softly, as if surrendering to some invisible force that was coaxing it into movement. To the untrained eye, it looked like the remnants of a late frost, or perhaps the effect of a harsh winter wind. But to those who dared to gaze deeper, to truly observe, it was a phenomenon that stirred a primal fear within. The locals could only wonder, their hearts pounding with a mix of terror and awe, too afraid to venture closer. They stood at the edges of their properties, peering out from behind the safety of their curtains, as if the thin glass could shield them from whatever was unfolding in that field. The very air crackled with anticipation, thickening with an unnerving energy that made the hair on the back of their necks stand on end. It was as if the night itself had taken on a sentient quality, watching them back with a keen awareness that sent shivers down their spines. In the distance, a barn owl hooted cautiously, its voice a solitary beacon of normalcy in a world that felt increasingly foreign. But the sound was swallowed by the heavy air, a reminder of the isolation that clung to the town. The dirt roads, usually bustling with the sounds of tires crunching over gravel, lay deserted and silent. Even the horses in the nearby stable, renowned for their spirited whinnies, stood stock still, their ears flicking nervously as they sensed the disruption in the atmosphere. They were attuned to the rhythms of nature, and they knew something was terribly wrong. Suddenly, a subtle vibration rippled through the ground, a low hum that resonated deep within their bones. The sensation was not just felt, but experienced, a physical manifestation of dread that twisted their stomachs and quickened their breaths. The vibrations seemed to whisper secrets from the depths of the earth, beckoning them closer, yet warning them to stay away. A collective gasp arose from the small gathering of onlookers. They felt it too. It was a call to curiosity, a beckoning to explore the unknown, yet it was laced with an instinctual urge to flee, to retreat to the safety of their homes. Amidst this turmoil, a flickering light emerged from the heart of the field, casting erratic shadows that danced like phantoms across the frozen expanse. The light pulsed rhythmically, a heartbeat echoing in the stillness, illuminating the ground in shades of silver and blue. It was mesmerizing and terrifying all at once, a visual enigma that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. No one could explain the light. It was neither a lantern nor a star, but something in between, something alive. As it pulsed, the frost beneath it seemed to shimmer, creating a geometric pattern that spiraled and twisted into shapes neither human nor animal. With each flicker, the townspeople felt a magnetic pull, a compulsion to step closer, to unravel the mystery that lay before them. But fear held them back, anchoring them in place as they exchanged anxious glances. Who would be brave enough to approach the field, to confront the unknown? They stood rooted in a delicate balance between disbelief and a primal instinct to flee, caught in a web of their own making. As the light continued to pulse, a low metallic sound reverberated through the air, a haunting melody that seemed to resonate from deep within the earth. It was a sound that was simultaneously foreign and familiar, echoing the ancient songs of the land, yet twisted into something otherworldly. The vibrations intensified, causing their bones to rattle and their hearts to race. It was a symphony of terror and wonder, a call to an uncharted territory that lay beyond the veil of understanding. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the phenomena ceased. The light dimmed, the vibrations faded, and the air grew still once more. Silence returned, but it was a silence charged with the weight of unsaid words, of unanswered questions that hung heavily in the air. The townspeople, still trembling, exchanged uncertain glances, each of them holding on to the threads of their own fears and doubts. Was that a miracle or a curse they had witnessed? Whatever it was, it had left an indelible mark on their souls, a haunting memory that would linger long after the night faded into dawn. As the last remnants of light extinguished, a chilling thought crept into their minds. Something had awakened in the darkness, and it was watching them back. In the depths of their hearts, they knew this was not the end of the mystery. It was merely the beginning. The fields of Maplewood had transformed into a canvas of the unknown, a place where the boundaries of reality blurred, and the fear of what lurked beneath the surface became a palpable entity. The night hung thickly over Maplewood, a blanket of darkness that seemed to pulse with an ancient energy. The moon, a mere sliver in the sky, cast a faint glow over the fields, illuminating the contours of the land in an eerie, silvery sheen. The air was laced with the scent of damp earth and the distant whispers of rustling leaves, but the usual sounds of nocturnal life had been swallowed by an unsettling stillness. It was in this silence that the townspeople found themselves, standing at the precipice of something extraordinary yet profoundly unsettling. As they gathered on the dirt road leading to the field, the gravel crunched beneath their feet, a stark reminder of their earthly presence. The wind, once a gentle caress, now bore a chill that crept into their bones, sending shivers down their spines. They could feel the weight of the darkness, as if it were a living entity wrapping around them, squeezing their resolve. Each breath became a conscious effort, a reminder of their humanity amidst the overwhelming sense of foreboding that enveloped them. The field lay ahead, a vast expanse shrouded in shadow, where the contours of the land melded into the night. It was a place where the familiar comfort of home faded, replaced by an unsettling sense of the unknown. In the distance, the faint outline of a barn stood sentinel, its weathered wooden beams a stark contrast against the inky backdrop. Even the animals, usually restless in the night, had succumbed to an unnatural quiet. The horses in the nearby pasture stood still, their heads raised, eyes wide and glistening with fear, as if they too sensed the encroaching mystery that beckoned from the field. Then, In the depths of that silence, a sound emerged. Soft, almost imperceptible at first. It was a low hum that vibrated through the air, resonating with an intensity that seemed to come from the earth itself. The townspeople exchanged anxious glances, their hearts quickening as the sound grew louder, morphing into a pulsating rhythm that matched the frantic beat of their hearts. It was a sound that felt both ancient and alien, as if the ground beneath them was speaking a language long forgotten. The wind shifted, carrying with it an unfamiliar scent, sharp and metallic, igniting their senses. It was a smell that clawed at the edges of their consciousness, stirring something deep within them. An instinctual fear that urged them to turn and flee. Yet, their feet remained rooted to the spot, caught in a web of curiosity and terror. They felt an invisible thread pulling them toward the field, toward the source of the sound, as if the very fabric of the night was urging them to uncover the truth. As they stood there, the air around them seemed to thicken, charged with an electric energy that crackled like static. The vibrations surged through their bodies, a tangible force that made the hairs on their arms stand on end. With each pulse, the ground seemed to come alive, the earth vibrating beneath them, as if responding to the symphony of sound and light that echoed in the distance. It was a call, a haunting melody that resonated with something primal, something that transcended their understanding of reality. Then, without warning, the pulsating sound crescendoed into a deafening silence. The lights that had danced before their eyes flickered and vanished, leaving the field shrouded in darkness once more. The abrupt shift was jarring, a sudden cessation that left their ears ringing and their hearts pounding. It was a silence that felt oppressive, filled with an unspoken dread, as if the very air was holding its breath. For a moment they stood frozen, suspended in time, grappling with the weight of what they had witnessed. And then, in that suffocating quiet, the first whispers of doubt began to unfurl. What had they really seen? Was it an illusion, a trick of the mind brought on by fear? Or was it something more, something that defied explanation? As the townspeople began to murmur among themselves, their voices were tinged with uncertainty, each word a thread weaving their doubts tighter. Some dismissed the experience as mere fancy, the overactive imaginations of rural folk. Others felt a deep-seated fear grip them, a primal awareness that whatever had stirred in the depths of the field was not done with them yet. It was in the midst of their confusion that a chilling realization struck. Something had changed in the night. The field was no longer just a patch of land. It was a repository of secrets, a place where the boundaries of the known and the unknown blurred into an indistinguishable haze. As they glanced toward the darkness, a collective shiver ran through the group. The sensation of being watched crept into their minds, a gnawing awareness that whatever had stirred beneath the surface was now observing them, waiting. With the weight of uncertainty heavy upon them, they began to retreat, the dirt road crunching beneath their hurried steps. Yet as they turned away from the field, an inexplicable urge pulled at their hearts, a yearning to understand, to confront what lay hidden in the shadows. As the first hints of dawn began to creep over the horizon, the townspeople felt the tension settle within them, an unshakable awareness that this night was just the beginning, and the echoes of the unknown would reverberate long after the stars faded from the sky. The mystery of Maplewood had awakened, and they were now part of its unfolding story, a tale woven with fear, curiosity, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The air hung heavy, thick with an unease that wrapped around the townspeople like a shroud. The night had not only stolen their sense of safety, it had gifted them with an inexplicable dread that clung to them, a weight that felt like the very fabric of reality had frayed at the edges. As they stepped away from the field, a haunting silence settled in, punctuated only by the distant rustle of leaves and the faint, mournful call of an owl, a sound that seemed to echo their own inner turmoil. With every footfall on the dirt road, the crunch of gravel beneath their shoes became a reminder of their retreat from the unknown. Yet it was accompanied by an unsettling awareness that they were not merely leaving behind a field, but rather a threshold to something far more profound. The earth beneath them felt alive, as if it pulsed with a heartbeat they could not see but could certainly feel. The wind whispered secrets, carrying with it a scent that was both metallic and earthy, a mixture that made their stomachs churn and their skin prick with goosebumps. As they turned to glance back at the expanse of darkness, the field seemed to breathe, undulating in the moonlight like an ancient creature stirring from slumber. Shapes danced in the periphery of their vision, fleeting and elusive, leaving behind only a sense of disquiet. The stars twinkled overhead, indifferent witnesses to the turmoil unfolding below, their light barely penetrating the thick veil of night. There was a magnetic pull, an inexplicable draw towards that darkened patch of land where reality twisted and turned, forming patterns that defied logic. It was then that the first signs of something amiss pierced the veil of their collective consciousness. A low hum began to vibrate through the air, a sound that resonated deep within their bones, sending tremors of apprehension through their bodies. The dogs, usually so eager and curious, huddled close to their owners, their fur bristling as they sensed an unseen threat. One by one, the townsfolk exchanged glances, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. It was as if the very atmosphere had shifted, a subtle but undeniable change that set their nerves on edge. "What was that?" whispered Clara, her voice barely rising above the hum that seemed to envelop them. She was a newcomer, having moved to Maplewood only months before, seeking the tranquility of rural life. Now, she stood at the edge of the familiar, her heart racing as she felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. "No idea," replied Tom, his brow creased in concern. He had lived here all his life, but the unease that settled in his chest was unlike anything he had ever known. "But whatever it is, it doesn't feel right." As they stood there, lost in their thoughts, a sudden gust of wind swept through the field, carrying with it a rustling sound that seemed almost like a whisper, a soft, beckoning call that sent shivers racing down their spines. It was a sound both beautiful and haunting, wrapping around them like a lover's embrace before pulling away, leaving only a longing ache in its wake. The air became electric, charged with something they could neither see nor comprehend. Then, as if on cue, the lights returned, flickering again in the distance, casting an eerie glow over the field. They moved in patterns, almost like a silent language written against the backdrop of the night. Some stood still, while others darted about, weaving through the rows of corn, as if they were part of an intricate dance. The townsfolk's hearts raced in tandem with the flickering lights, a rhythm that echoed the unspoken fears lurking within each of them. "I think we should go back," Clara urged, her voice trembling. "Whatever that is, it can't be safe." Tom nodded, but an internal struggle flickered behind his eyes. The same fear that urged him to flee also pulled him toward that field, toward the enigmatic dance of lights and shadows that seemed to promise answers to questions he didn't yet know how to ask. "We can't just leave it like this. We have to understand what happened." A deafening silence fell over the group as they stood torn between instinct and curiosity. The landscape around them felt surreal, as if they had crossed over into a realm where time and reality had lost their meaning. The gentle rustle of the corn, the distant hoot of the owl, and the faint hum of energy all blended into a symphony of the unknown, each sound a note in a haunting melody that resonated with their deepest fears. For a fleeting moment, the air thickened with anticipation, as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for their next move. Would they retreat into the safety of their homes, sealing themselves off from the mystery that beckoned? Or would they step forward, willing to confront the enigma that had awakened in the heart of Maplewood? As the lights flickered once more, a sudden realization washed over them, a sense that they were not merely observers of this unfolding drama, but participants in a cosmic dance that transcended the ordinary. The field, once a simple patch of land, had transformed into a stage where the unknown played out in vivid, unsettling detail. Each heartbeat echoed the question that lingered in the air: what awaited them in the shadows, and what price would they pay for the truth? It was a call to adventure, a whisper that promised both terror and revelation. And as they stood at the precipice of the unknown, the townspeople felt the weight of their decision settle over them like a dark cloud, heavy with the promise of nightmares yet to unfold. The night had only just begun, and the boundaries between reality and the inexplicable had begun to dissolve, leaving them teetering on the edge of something profound. The night deepened, wrapping the world in a thick quilt of darkness, as if the stars themselves had conspired to cloak the field in shadows. The air was heavy with an electric charge, a tangible pulse that vibrated against their skin, sending shivers coursing through their bodies. It felt as though the land itself was alive, breathing in sync with their mounting trepidation. As they stood at the edge of the field, the group felt the ground beneath them shift subtly, as if it were a living entity responding to their collective apprehension. The cornstalks loomed tall and menacing, their sharp edges catching the faintest glimmer of light from the distant farmhouse. Each rustle whispered secrets, ancient and unsettling, while the wind carried with it a scent that was both sweet and metallic, like the remnants of a forgotten storm. In that moment, the silence was not empty. It was pregnant with possibility. The distant hoot of an owl punctuated the stillness, its cry echoing like a warning in the vastness of the night. The sound drifted through the air, wrapping around them, binding their fates to the enigma that lay just beyond the horizon of their understanding. It was as if nature itself was holding its breath, waiting for them to make their next move. Then, from the heart of the field, a flicker of light danced to life. A brief spark that illuminated the surrounding darkness with an ethereal glow. The light pulsed rhythmically, casting long, distorted shadows that twisted and curled like spectral fingers reaching out to ensnare them. It was mesmerizing and terrifying all at once, drawing them closer with an irresistible force. "Did you see that?" someone whispered, the words barely escaping their lips, laden with awe and fear. The flickering intensified, morphing into a series of geometric shapes that unfurled across the ground, shimmering with a brilliance that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Stars of intricate design appeared, each point radiating a sense of ancient wisdom, as if the very fabric of the universe was being woven before their eyes. But with the beauty came a deepening dread. The vibrations in the air morphed into a low hum, a sound that resonated deep within their bones. It felt like the heartbeat of the earth itself, thrumming in a rhythm that was both inviting and ominous. The animals in the nearby barn began to stir restlessly, their agitation palpable, as if they sensed the disturbance that had broken the tranquility of the night. "Something's not right," another voice trembled, breaking the heavy silence. It was a statement laced with a sense of urgency, a realization that something beyond their comprehension was unfolding in that very moment. The flickering lights seemed to respond, swirling faster, the geometry twisting and spiraling into a vortex of shimmering chaos. It was as if the field had become a portal, a threshold to another realm, one that was both alluring and terrifying. The group stood transfixed, caught between the allure of the spectacle and the primal instinct to flee. A low growl of wind whispered through the trees, wrapping around them like a shroud, amplifying the tension that hung in the air. It carried with it an ancient echo, a reminder of times long past when the boundary between the known and the unknown was far more fragile than they had ever imagined. And then, in a moment that felt suspended in time, the lights exploded into a brilliant white flash, momentarily blinding them. A cacophony of metallic sounds erupted, sharp and discordant, filling the night with an unsettling symphony. It was the sound of something awakening, something that had lain dormant beneath the surface of the earth, waiting for this very moment to rise. The ground trembled beneath their feet, a violent shudder that sent a wave of panic coursing through the group. They instinctively took a step back, their hearts racing, pulses quickening with each tremor. The air thickened, a palpable force that seemed to cling to their skin, smothering them with an unsettling sense of dread. As the blinding light faded, leaving only a lingering glow that illuminated the shifting shadows, they dared to peer into the field. The ground had transformed, no longer a mere stretch of land, but a canvas painted with intricate patterns that defied explanation. Perfect circles and sharp angles intertwined, creating a labyrinth of geometric shapes that seemed to pulse with life. It was a design that spoke of ancient knowledge, a language lost to time, yet alive in the stillness of the night. But amid the beauty, a foreboding presence lingered, an awareness that they were not alone. The sensation crept over them, prickling the back of their necks, a cold whisper that suggested they were being watched. Eyes unseen, perhaps from the very depths of the cosmos, observing their every move with a hunger that felt both alien and familiar. This can't be real, one voice quivered, the disbelief threading through their words. Yet the evidence of their senses betrayed them. What had transpired was undeniable, a reality that had shattered their understanding of the ordinary. As they stood there, on the precipice of revelation, the night deepened around them, and the weight of the unknown pressed heavily on their shoulders. They were caught in a web of cosmic intrigue, each thread woven with the fabric of their fears and desires, the promise of answers mingling with the terror of what those answers might reveal. What had awakened in the field that night? Would they dare to explore further, to delve into the shadows that danced just beyond their reach? The answers lay waiting, cloaked in mystery, ready to unravel the very essence of their existence. But first, they would have to confront the fear that gripped their hearts, a fear that was only just beginning to take shape. The air hung heavy with tension, a silence that was almost deafening, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves and the occasional call of a night bird, eerily out of place in the stillness. The group stood, a tight-knit cluster, hearts pounding like a drumbeat of fear and curiosity. The glow from the field cast elongated shadows that danced across their faces, contorting their expressions into masks of awe and trepidation. Each breath felt thick, as if inhaling the very essence of the unknown, mingled with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, a tang that clung to the air. "I don't want to be here anymore," whispered Sarah, her voice trembling, the words barely escaping her lips. Her eyes darted around, searching for something, anything, that would ground her in reality. The designs before them, so intricate and deliberate, seemed to draw her gaze like a moth to a flame. They were impossibly perfect, the lines crisp and the angles sharp, as if carved by hands that understood the secrets of the universe. Yet, beneath the beauty lay an unsettling feeling, a gnawing dread that something was fundamentally wrong. "Look closer," Mark urged, stepping forward despite the chill that coursed through him. "This isn't just random, it's a message." His voice held a mixture of excitement and fear, a duality that mirrored the emotions swirling within each of them. As he knelt to examine the patterns, the ground beneath him seemed to pulse, a soft thrum that resonated deep within his chest. It was as if the earth itself was alive, vibrating with an energy that defied explanation. The others exchanged glances, a silent communication filled with doubt and intrigue. They could feel it too, the vibrations, subtle yet insistent, sending ripples of fear through their bodies. The shadows seemed to stretch and shift, twisting into forms that teased the edges of their peripheral vision. It was as if the darkness had a life of its own, swirling around them, wrapping them in its embrace. "Do you think it's safe?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with a tremor that betrayed her bravado. The question hung in the air, heavy and laden with implications. They had all felt the weight of being watched, an unseen presence lurking just beyond the edge of their understanding, waiting, observing, perhaps even judging. "Safe? I don't think that's the right question," Max replied, his brow furrowed in thought. "We need to know what this is. There has to be an explanation." The conviction in his voice was a thin veneer over his own rising fear, an attempt to mask the uncertainty gnawing at his gut. Yet even as he spoke, the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end, a primal instinct screaming that they were treading on sacred ground, a territory not meant for their kind. The wind picked up suddenly, swirling around them with a ferocity that sent chills down their spines. It carried with it a low hum, an almost melodic sound that seemed to resonate with the very patterns in the field. The notes rose and fell, a haunting lullaby that beckoned them closer, urging them to step into the labyrinth of mystery that lay before them. But as they stood there, paralyzed by the allure and the fear, the shadows deepened, and the night seemed to conspire against them, thickening the atmosphere with an oppressive weight. "Do you hear that?" Sarah's voice trembled again, straining to penetrate the veil of sound that enveloped them. The hum grew louder, intertwining with the rustle of leaves, creating a dissonance that was both beautiful and terrifying. It felt like a warning, a siren song that urged them to flee while they still could. Yet at the same time, it called to something deep within, igniting a sense of wonder that mingled with dread. I think we should leave," she finally said, her resolve faltering under the weight of her own fears. "Whatever this is, it's not for us." The words fell from her lips like stones, each one sinking into the pool of their collective anxiety, rippling outward, creating waves of uncertainty. But just as they began to turn, a flicker of movement caught their attention. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, a shadow darting just beyond the reach of their sight. They froze, hearts pounding in sync, their breaths hitching in their throats. The silhouette moved again, a whisper in the dark, and dread coiled tightly around their chests. "Did you see that?" Mark whispered, his eyes wide as he pointed toward the field. The others nodded, a silent agreement passing between them, the fear palpable in the air. They were not alone. Something was out there, lurking in the shadows, watching them with an intensity that sent shivers coursing down their spines. "We need to go," Sarah insisted, her voice now firm, fueled by adrenaline and instinct. Yet as they turned to leave, the hum intensified, resonating through the very ground beneath them, causing vibrations to ripple through their bodies. It felt almost like a plea, an invitation wrapped in danger, urging them to uncover the secrets hidden within the patterns that sprawled across the field. As they stepped back, the glow from the formations flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around them like phantoms in the night. The sensation of being watched intensified, a weight pressing down on them, making it nearly impossible to breathe. Each step away felt like a betrayal of something profound, a connection to the mystery that beckoned them. Yet the instinct to flee tugged at their heels. In that moment, they stood at the crossroads of fear and discovery, each heartbeat echoing the unspoken question that hung in the air like a dark cloud. What would they risk to uncover the truth? As the shadows closed in around them, they felt the pull of the unknown, a gravity that threatened to ensnare them, leaving them teetering on the brink of revelation and terror. The night deepened, and with it, the air crackled with possibilities, the tension mounting as they faced the darkness that awaited just beyond sight. As dawn broke over the horizon, the remnants of the previous night's terror loomed large in the minds of the four friends. The sun, a hesitant orb of gold, struggled to illuminate the fields that had been transformed into a canvas of dread. The air was thick with the scent of dew and earth, a stark contrast to the palpable tension that hung over them. Each breath felt heavy, laden with unspoken fears and the weight of an experience that had chipped away at their sense of reality. They stood at the edge of the field, staring at the formation that had appeared overnight, a geometric anomaly that defied logic. The pattern sprawled across the ground with an unsettling perfection, each curve and angle seemingly designed with a purpose that eluded their understanding. Sarah stepped closer, her heart racing as she traced the outlines with her eyes. There was something almost hypnotic about the way the shapes intertwined, an ancient language written in the soil that whispered secrets from a time long forgotten. "Look at how the plants bend," Mark murmured, crouching down to examine the edges of the formation. "They're not broken. It's like they've been pressed down gently." His fingers brushed against the grass, feeling the warmth radiating from the earth, a stark contrast to the chill that wrapped around their minds. The early morning sun glinted off the blades, casting shards of light that flickered like distant stars. Yet, as they ventured deeper into the formation, the air grew heavier, suffocating in its stillness. The birds, usually a symphony of morning sounds, had fallen silent. It was as if the world had paused, holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. The only sound was the soft crunch of their footsteps on the grass, each step echoing in the void of silence, amplifying the unease that settled in the pit of their stomachs. "Why is it so quiet?" Sarah's voice trembled slightly, a reflection of the dread pooling within her. "It doesn't feel right." She glanced around, the shadows stretching longer than they should in the early light, creating a tapestry of confusion that twisted her perception of the familiar landscape. The barn in the distance, once a comforting sight, now appeared menacing, its weathered wood a reminder of the secrets it might hold. "Maybe we should call someone," suggested Jenna, her eyes darting nervously as she took a step back, as if the very ground beneath her could swallow her whole. "We can't just ignore this." But Mark shook his head, his gaze fixated on the formation, an unyielding curiosity sparking within him. The fear of the unknown was palpable, yet it danced tantalizingly close to an inexplicable compulsion to understand. "Can't you feel it?" he replied, his voice low and intense. "It's like it's calling to us." The words hung in the air, thick with implication. The hum from the night before had faded, but its echo lingered, a distant thrum in the back of their minds. The sensation of being watched returned, a prickling awareness at the nape of their necks, urging them to uncover the truth hidden within the enigmatic shapes. Suddenly, a low rumble vibrated through the ground, a sound that resonated deep in their bones. The friends exchanged glances, a shared understanding passing between them. This was no ordinary occurrence. The earth seemed alive, shifting beneath their feet, as if it were responding to an unseen force. The vibration was both unsettling and mesmerizing, a reminder of the cosmic tension that lay just beneath the surface of their reality. As they moved closer to the center of the formation, an inexplicable sense of dread mingled with a thrill of discovery. The geometric shapes twisted and turned, drawing them in with an allure that felt almost magnetic. They could see the delicate patterns etched into the soil, a tapestry of symbols that whispered of ancient knowledge. It was as if they had stumbled upon a relic of a past life, a message waiting to be deciphered by those brave enough to confront the unknown. "What if we're not meant to be here?" Jenna's voice quivered, but the words seemed to have little weight against the pull of the mystery. The dark corners of their minds conjured images of what lay beyond the veil of their understanding, forces that thrived on ignorance, shadows that thrived in the absence of light. But the allure of the enigma was stronger than their fear, and they found themselves stepping further into the heart of the formation. Just then, a flicker of movement caught Sarah's eye. She turned sharply, her heart racing as a shadow darted through the periphery of her vision. "Did you see that?" she gasped, her breath hitching in her throat. The others turned, straining to see what she had glimpsed, but all that met their eyes was the stillness of the field, the shadows playing tricks in the early light. "Probably just a deer," Mark offered weakly, but even he did not believe his own words. The hairs on the back of his neck stood at attention, and the feeling of being watched intensified. It was as if the very fabric of the field had come alive, a silent audience observing their every move with a knowing gaze. As they stood in the center of the formation, enveloped by the weight of the unknown, the air crackled with anticipation. The shadows thickened, swirling around them like a cyclone of darkness, and the patterns on the ground pulsed with an energy that felt otherworldly. It was a moment suspended in time, a collective breath held as they confronted the mystery that lay before them. A mystery that promised revelation, yet threatened to unravel the very threads of their understanding. With hearts pounding and breaths shallow, they stood on the precipice of discovery, acutely aware of the tension that surrounded them. The world around them faded into insignificance, leaving only the formation and the questions it posed. What had transpired here? What secrets lay buried beneath the surface? And most importantly, what would happen if they chose to delve deeper into the enigma that loomed before them, threatening to swallow them whole? The answer lay just beyond their reach, tantalizingly close, yet shrouded in the mystery of the cosmos. The sun hung low in the sky, casting elongated shadows that stretched across the field, reaching out like fingers, grasping for something just out of grasp. A silence thick and palpable enveloped the group as they stood at the center of the formation, their senses heightened, each heartbeat echoing in their ears. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, an undertone that lingered, unsettling and foreign. Sarah, still trembling from the fleeting shadow, felt the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, a rhythmic thrum that resonated deep within her core. She glanced at her companions, their faces etched with a mix of wonder and trepidation. They were drawn together by the shared experience, yet each of them was an island of individual fear, struggling against the tide of the unknown that threatened to pull them under. Mark, the skeptic of the group, stood frozen, his breath hitching as he fought against the primal urge to flee. The formation, with its intricate geometry, seemed to hum with energy, each line and curve whispering secrets that danced just beyond the reach of comprehension. It was as though the very air crackled with anticipation, vibrating with an intensity that made the hairs on the back of their necks stand on end. He found himself fixated on the patterns beneath his feet, the way they spiraled and twisted in ways that felt both familiar and alien, like symbols from a language long forgotten. "Maybe we should go," he suggested, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking louder might shatter the fragile veil of silence that surrounded them. But before anyone could respond, a low rumble echoed in the distance, reverberating through the ground like a heartbeat of some unseen creature. It was a sound that seemed to originate from the very depths of the earth, a reminder that they were not alone, that something was watching. "Did you hear that?" Sarah's voice trembled, the words barely forming as she glanced around, searching for the source. The others nodded, their expressions mirroring her dread. The sound resonated again, a low, throbbing pulse that sent a shiver down their spines. It was as if the very essence of the field was alive, breathing, and watching them with an intensity that was both thrilling and terrifying. A sudden gust of wind swept through the formation, carrying with it an electric charge that crackled in the air, brushing against their skin like the gentle touch of a ghost. The light shifted, casting elongated shadows that danced across the ground, changing the perception of the formation with every flicker. The patterns seemed to shift and bend, creating an optical illusion that played tricks on their minds, twisting reality in ways that felt deeply unsettling. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Sarah caught a glimpse of something moving, a fleeting blur darting between the rows of tall grass. Panic surged through her as she turned to face it, her heart racing. But all she found was the lingering unease of the field, a stillness that felt charged with anticipation. "It's just the wind," Mark said, though his voice trembled, betraying his uncertainty. Yet, the doubt lingered, gnawing at the edges of their resolve. The formation loomed around them, an enigma that pulsed with an energy that seemed to draw them in, threatening to ensnare them in its grasp. It felt as if they were standing on the threshold of something monumental, an opening into the unknown that promised answers, yet warned of dangers untold. The atmosphere thickened, and within that silence, they could almost hear the whispers of the past, echoing from the depths of time. As Sarah drew a shaky breath, she felt a sudden warmth behind her, an inexplicable heat that radiated from the ground. She turned eyes wide, and her heart sank as she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small, intricately carved stone, half buried in the earth, its surface glimmering faintly in the fading light. It was a symbol, one that seemed to resonate with the patterns around them, a piece of a puzzle that could unveil the truth or plunge them deeper into chaos. "Look at this," she called, her voice a mix of excitement and fear. The others gathered around, their eyes drawn to the stone as if it held the key to unlocking the mystery. But as they leaned in closer, the air grew heavy, and the sense of being watched intensified, a cold dread creeping up their spines. "Something isn't right," Mark murmured, his voice barely audible over the pounding of his heart. "What if this is a trap?" In that moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The stone pulsed beneath their touch, a heartbeat in sync with the vibrations that resonated through the air. They were teetering on the edge of revelation, yet the shadows around them deepened, twisting and curling as if alive, threatening to engulf them in their dark embrace. An unshakable feeling settled over them, a deep, primal instinct that urged them to flee from the formation, to escape the unexplainable forces that seemed to conspire against them. But the lure of discovery, the intoxicating promise of answers, held them captive, their feet rooted to the ground as they faced the unfathomable abyss. With each passing moment, the tension grew, and the air crackled with potential energy, a warning echoing in the silence. Whatever lay ahead was intertwined with their fates, a revelation that could illuminate their understanding or plunge them into darkness. And as they stood there, a small, unassuming stone in hand, they realized that the true mystery was not just what had happened in that field, but what they were willing to confront within themselves, the fear of the unknown, the shadows lurking just beyond the veil, and the undeniable truth that sometimes the most profound mysteries lie in the depths of our own souls. In that stillness, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows converged, and for a heartbeat it felt as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling, leaving them on the precipice of something extraordinary, an encounter with the infinite, shrouded in the eternal embrace of the cosmos. And just like that, the world faded to black, leaving behind only the echo of their unspoken fears and the tantalizing promise of secrets yet to be revealed.